try and catch you up since we've been gone. The economy hit a brick wall, stalling on jobs while inflation continued to rise. So Trump met with Putin in Alaska to force Ukraine to accept Crackle Barrel's new logo, while Labubu released a new Epstein file and Taylor got engaged. It's a blur. It's all a blur. But all of it takes a back seat to continuing concerns over the president's health.
We haven't really seen much of the president over the last week.
Basically absent from the public eye.
He's clearly hiding something about his health.
The hashtag Trump is dead trended on social media.
What the you people? You reporters have no chill. Guy can't take a few days for some R&R and a non-surgical breast reduction without everybody suddenly pulling out the toe tags on the president. It does say something about the ubiquity of Donald Trump in our lives, that we don't hear from him for 20 minutes and we're like, he's dead. I think he's... Check, can we track him? How do you know he's dead? Well, it's been 7 minutes since the word news scum has come up on my feed. He must be dead. But of course, Trump didn't die in office, but I wouldn't put it past him. Trying once again to take credit for something Biden had already accomplished. But that being said, Trump is alive, although I definitively would not go so far as to say alive and kicking. Something is up with his health.
New today, the White House revealing President Trump has been diagnosed with a condition called chronic venous insufficiency.
Chronic venous insufficiency, a relatively common condition, something that gets more common as you get older.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I wander into the wrong classroom at Boring University? Can someone please explain his physical condition to me in a way I'd be interested in, the style of perhaps a world-weary Brit?
His ankles, swollen and straining over his Oxfords, aren't just unsightly cankles. They're flashing neon signs of a body under pressure.
Put that Attenborough right into my veins! The aging president struggles to keep up with the herd. And as night falls, it's clear the lions will eat well tonight. On a menu. Wait, I want to tell you the menu. On a menu of Cankles au poivre. It might not have been worth the walk, but I felt I owed it to you. By the way, it's not just the cankles he's got going. The whole meat bag seems to be having some kind of drainage issue.
These images of the president have drawn attention in recent days, showing apparent bruising on his hands that was covered with makeup.
Jesus, Grandpa! Put him away. Holy shit! And what's with the makeup? It's not like you can treat leprosy at Sephora. God! By the way, may I remind you, these are just the parts poking out that we can see. I bet everything on that body not covered by clothes is all up right now. For all we know, the guy's gone full Grimace. Blotchy hands, puffy ankles. Although, to be fair to Trump, people got a little nitpicky.
We can see that there is sort of like a lumpy situation going on Trump's forehead. One of his eyes is half closed.
All right, now you're just being mean. Oh, he's got a swollen ankle, he's got a little bit on the thing, but look at his eyes. lumpy. See, this is the problem with our superficial Instagram culture. We have unrealistic expectations in this country about the amount of fluid our bodies should be able to clear subcutaneously. It sends the wrong message to young people. These really are not medical appraisals. It's just more like insults. Like, hey, according to the Mayo Clinic, why are his eyes so lumpy? Insiders have been calling the president Skippy because under his skin looks a little extra chunky. Hey, the president's neck looks so much like Betty White's vagina that Milton Berle. Too soon? Yeah, I was going to do the reason we did so the tag to that was going to be that Milton Berle tried to it, but you clearly rejected the premise. Why should I? I came with the we're full. Now, normally, we might be able to dismiss these symptoms, but Trump himself seems very focused these days on securing a prime piece of afterlife real estate.
I want to try and get to heaven.
Sure you do. But you know what? Hey, look, the first step is always admitting you have a problem. Maybe you can turn this thing around. If there's a will, there's a way for you to get yourself back up that golden escalator to the heavens.
Just moments ago, Democrats on the panel posted this image with a caption that reads, quote, "Here it is. We got Trump's birthday note to Jeffrey Epstein that the president said doesn't exist."
Going down. Oh, well. It's okay. It's okay. But it's not just the physical symptoms that make you think the president is transitioning from this mortal coil. It's that whenever any of his biggest supporters are with him, it sounds like they're saying goodbye.
Mr. President, working for this government, for you, is the greatest honor of my life.
When history looks back on you, how would you like to be remembered?
I'll never forget standing in the East Room with you, surrounded by the coal miners around this country, where you said, "Hey, big, beautiful coal."
Remember, Mr. President? And I said, no, these are humans. The coal is what they dig for. And then, anyway, we'll miss you. And have you ever been to one of those funerals where there's a video of the recently departed? Well, 6 days ago, the White House released one of them.
Let me share some of the biggest lessons I've learned from a lifetime spent building dreams. First, if you think that you're too young to do something great, let me tell you that you are wrong. You're not too young.
There's no such thing as too young. I'm having trouble getting a read on these people. If you're watching this video, I'm already dead. But by the way, once you begin to notice this pattern, you begin to see really the whole vibe around this president is very Make-A-Wish kid. Everyone who shows up to his office tries to make one of his dreams come true.
We thought it was only appropriate to present you with an honorary United States Marshal Service badge.
Look how happy they made him. Gee whiz, mister, a real marshal? This is even better than when they let me drive a garbage truck. Now you might be saying to yourself, and the Make-A-Wish thing is a little much. A grown man would recognize when people are condescending to him, treating him like a child, tiptoeing around his fragile ego, with the idea that this person is so easily manipulated that even the cheapest of gestures could be persuasive. You would think that.
It is the trophy that the winner of the FIFA World Cup wins. Only the FIFA president and then those who win can touch it, because it's for winners only. And since you are a winner, of course, you can as well touch it.
Also, I have in the bag Thor's hammer. But only the bravest boy can pick it up. Only the bravest boy can. Oh my God, you did it! You picked it up! You're Thor! I'm telling you though, man, this goes way past trophy fondling and cereal box deputy badges. The people around Trump know that he is a never-ending, insatiable black hole of wishes.
It's well past time that President Trump was awarded the Nobel Peace Prize.
When Operation Warp Speed was started, it was a massive success for our country. And I do agree that President Trump should get the Nobel Prize for that.
I'm thinking that since he's basically taught the world trade economics, he might be up for the Nobel on economics.
Ooh, Donald Trump, the first recipient of the Nobel Prize Variety Pack. Ooh. Economics, chemistry. Oh, here's one for monogamy. It's really entirely made up. Sure, why not just fire up the 3D printer and print all the Nobels for Donnie? Or perhaps they sell them at Spencer Gifts, which still exists. It's a real... You may have killed our bookstores, Bezos, but in America, we still shop in person for our lava lamps and our dildos that suction cup to the wall. By the way, word to the wise, the seal is unreliable. Everything about the treatment of this president screams Make-A-Wish kid. Ooh, you'll meet your favorite celebrities and they'll dress up for you. Oh, I know while you're president, you won't be able to sleep at your home. And it probably feels a little scary and a little uncomfortable, so... Makeover! Oh, and did you get an owie? No, it doesn't look weird at all. In fact, we're all wearing them. It looks so cool. But if you think there are some government institutions that are above this kind of insulting obsequiousness, you would be wrong. Today, the Supreme Court bent over backwards to grant Trump even his most unconstitutional wishes. Like, maybe you can arrest people for looking Mexican.
Breaking at this hour, the Supreme Court again has backed President Trump's approach towards immigration. It is now ruled that they are allowing federal agents to proceed with raids in Southern California if they target people for deportation based on their race or language.
Hey, the good news, the Supreme Court supports affirmative action based on race. The bad news is that action is ICE deporting you. What the What kind of a Make-A-Wish kid wants to nullify the Fourth Amendment? I'm beginning to think Trump isn't a benign, suffering child at all. I'm beginning to think everybody treats Trump like this, not because he's the Make-A-Wish kid, but because he's that Twilight Zone kid. That anytime somebody made him mad, he sent them out to the cornfield.
You're a bad man. You're a very bad man. And you keep thinking bad thoughts about me.
Think I'm wrong? Let's play a game. I'll play you 2 clips, and I'll bet you won't be able to tell the difference between scared townspeople trying not to be sent to the cornfield and Trump's sycophants.
It's good what you've done to Dad.
You've been doing an amazing job.
It was swell. It was just swell.
Great job, sir.
Okay, the production values give it away. But you gotta admit, it's weird. And it never ends.
Good that you've done that. Oh, it's real good.
People were applauding you.
You're a good boy, Anthony.
You're not just courageous, you're actually fearless.
Everybody loves you, Anthony. They love you, son.
The most consequential president of the modern era, if not all American history.
Only American history? To the cornfields! But this is where we're at, America. This is where we're at. For your consideration, a nation held hostage by the fragile ego of a man-baby president who may or may not be dying of hand syphilis. But is puffy. He's certainly, I don't know if he's dying. He's weirdly puffy. And who we're trapped with for at least 3 more years. In the Twilight Zone.
You might remember back in July, the Wall Street Journal released a bombshell report that Trump had given Jeffrey Epstein a creepy birthday card that suggested the two of them had a dark sexual secret. Although obviously any sexual secret is a dark sexual secret. No one's ever been like, don't tell anyone, but I like missionary. Now, of course, Trump completely denied this card even existed. And just to be sure, they even asked the woman who compiled all of Jeffrey Epstein's birthday cards. And luckily, she had 20 years of free time.
The messages compiled by Epstein's accomplice, Ghislaine Maxwell, currently serving a 20-year federal prison sentence for sex trafficking. In a recent interview, she told Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche, the president's former lawyer, that she could not remember if Trump contributed a message to the book.
Well, that sure is lucky for Trump, you know. He sent his deputy attorney general to privately talk with Ghislaine Maxwell while she's in a federal prison system he controls, and she doesn't remember anything incriminating about him. Surprising. What a nice thing for her to say about the president without receiving anything in return, right? Right? Right?
Maxwell recently receiving a highly unusual transfer to a minimum security prison just days after her interview with the DOJ.
Come on, guys. Come on. Did you have to do the quid pro quo that fast? You could have at least waited a week before you sent her to the prison with the fence you can just slide under. Look at this sign. What the kind of prison has a sign like that? Is this prison run by Texas Roadhouse? This looks like the sign for a church where the pastor plays an electric guitar. Also, Camp Bryan. I think my parents took me there for vacation once when I was 8. That's the prison with the big water slide, right? I'm joking. It looks nice, but that place is brutal. Room service stops at 10 p.m. So there you have it. The media says there's a letter. Trump's people say there's not. So I guess we'll never know who's telling the truth.
Breaking news. For the first time, we are seeing an image of the letter signed by Donald Trump for Jeffrey Epstein's 50th birthday.
Okay, so we know who's telling the truth. But this is huge. Epstein's estate finally released the actual birthday card, and it's as creepy as you'd expect.
The drawing shows the outline of a woman's torso, breasts and hips, with a message that reads, in part, "We have certain things in common, Jeffrey," and later, "Enigmas never age," before the closing words, "Happy birthday, and may every day be another wonderful secret."
The future president's signature is a squiggly Donald below her waist, mimicking pubic hair.
Okay. I know what we're all thinking. That's an excellent drawing. And I think Donald Trump might have a wonderful future as an artist. Look, now, obviously, that's a crappy drawing, but as a student of history, one thing I've learned is when a certain type of person dreams of being a great artist, we should encourage that instead. Now, even without the drawing, that is a strangely cryptic birthday card, no? Enigmas never age. There's a wonderful secret. Although, to be fair, it could be totally innocent. We have certain things in common, could mean anything. What are the things that we know about Epstein? He was a human trafficker. He was a pedophile. It could be any of those things. And I see why Trump's people denied that this card even existed. But now that we've all seen it, there's nothing left for them to do except continue to deny it.
The White House this morning flatly denying the president drew or signed the message.
The president did not write this letter. He did not sign this letter.
From what I see, it's not his signature. I've seen Donald Trump sign a million things.
This doesn't look like his signature to you?
Nope.
I can tell you my father does not sketch out cartoon drawings.
Okay. Hey, I'll give Eric Trump a pass. He has no way of knowing what a birthday card from his father would look like. But they're saying it's not Trump's signature. If only we had 1 to, 1 million examples of his signature that we could compare it to.
The far left is the birthday book signature. The one in the middle is a Trump signature from a 1999 letter to Larry King. And on the right is from a signed letter to Rudy Giuliani in 2001.
Or these from 1984 in a letter to the New York Times, 1995 to a Palm Beach official, 2014 in a note to Keith Olbermann.
There's even an inscription in a Trump book that Epstein owned from 1997.
You'll see all the basic shapes are exactly the same.
Yes, I see. So if you look at the angle of the downward arc on the capital D, you can see that you don't have to do any of this shit. It's his signature. Wow, it's his signature. It's his. It is funny how they're fact-checking one piece of evidence with another pieces of evidence. Like, these guys are like, if you look closely, Trump's signature on a birthday card to his pedophile best friend matches his signature on a note he wrote to his pedophile best friend. So we have his signature on this letter. It matches the signature on all of these other letters. Can you please just admit he signed the letter? Please, just admit it. Do what's right. I'm begging you.
About the Epstein case, would the White House support a professional handwriting expert review of the document released yesterday to prove that it's not the president's signature?
Sure, we would support that. And in fact, I have already seen many forensic analysts of signatures coming out. I believe it was the Daily Signal that published a piece with 3 separate signature analysts who said that this absolutely was not the president's authentic signature.
Yes, I think we have a photo of the signature analyst who said this wasn't Donald Trump's. It's a credible source. This is actually embarrassing for you guys. Just denying it at this point is not enough. Does anyone in the GOP want to help Trump out here? Congressman Burchett?
I mean, anybody can do a signature. We've seen the auto pen's been used quite a bit with the Biden administration.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Go from the signature to the auto pen to Joe Biden. But I bet you can get there quicker, though. Sure, these girls were underage, but you know who was overage? Joe Biden. Boom, did it. Okay, so they can't come up with a credible excuse. But the truth is, Trump can probably still wiggle out of this thing as long as new information stops coming out.
A second entry in the Epstein birthday book released yesterday appears to mention Donald Trump as well. The page was reportedly compiled by a member at Mar-a-Lago who included a photo of Epstein and others holding up a giant fake check purportedly from Trump to Epstein for $22,500. The attached letter jokes that the check was payment for a deal in which Epstein sold Trump a, quote, fully depreciated woman in 2003.
Wow. I am shocked and frankly disgusted that Joe Biden's auto pen did this also. But this is wild. This is wild. Trump was such a notorious creep that other people were mentioning it in their birthday cards. I've never gotten a birthday card that was like, happy birthday, Michael. Remember our high school gym coach who always let the girls have lunch in his office? That was crazy. Anyways, here's to another 40 more years, pal. Look, I'm not going to pretend that I completely understand whatever this gross inside joke is supposed to mean. All I know is it's very disrespectful to refer to someone as a fully depreciated woman. The correct term is a refurbished woman Pro Max 13. Since taking office, Donald Trump has been spending a lot of time redecorating, from paving over the Rose Garden to turning the Oval Office into a cash for gold storefront. But now that the White House is perfect, Trump has moved on to renovating the Department of Defense.
President Trump has just signed an executive order to rename the Department of Defense. The president wants to change the name back to the Department of War.
Not a good sign when a country that's not at war suddenly sets up a Department of War. What's the president trying to tell us about what's going to happen? It's like when your doctor asks you to come in and discuss your test results in person. Why? So we can high-five over how few STDs I have? So why is Trump doing this?
We won the First World War. We won the Second World War. We won everything before that and in between. And then we decided to go woke and we changed the name to Department of Defense.
Yeah. So the military went woke when they changed their name in 1947, that famously woke time period in American history. I guess wokeness is also why we lost in Vietnam, huh? Big mistake to carpet bomb that country with DVDs of The Black Little Mermaid. But okay, the new name is supposed to reflect that our military is no longer woke. What does that mean exactly? Pete Hegseth, could you tell us? Hey, but make it funky.
We're going to go on offense, not just on defense. Maximum lethality, not tepid legality. Violent effect, not politically correct.
Deadly force, not a gender studies course. It's World War III, not Adam and Steve. Agent Orange, not... I wrote myself into a corner. But yeah, slam poetry. Great. In his sobriety, Edgar Allan Bro over here picked up the one hobby that's actually worse than drinking. By the way, if the vibe we're going for is maximum lethality, we should probably also think about changing the name of the Pentagon. That name's not scaring anyone. Pentagon? That's just a pretentious square. You want the world quivering in their boots? From now on, it should be
the Polygon of Doom.
So yes, the Department of Defense is now officially the Department of War, except, funny thing, it's not really, literally, officially, actually.
To be clear, officially changing the name of the Department of Defense would require an act of Congress and 60 votes in the Senate, which Trump could not get.
It appears that this executive order is not really changing the name completely from DOD, Department of Defense, to Department of War, but is instead making it a secondary name.
Secondary name? Are you telling me the American military just gave itself an official nickname? If anything, that makes it seem weaker. There's nothing more pathetic than that friend that tries to create his own nickname. From now on, call me Stevie Muscles. Okay, that's cute, Stevie Muscles, but your mom's here to pick you up? But what's the harm, right? It's not going to cost us anything, right? Right? Right?
According to Politico, it will likely cost billions of dollars to change the name on stationery, emblems, plaques, and other signage at the Defense Department and bases around the world.
Billions? It's going to cost billions to adopt this not even name but nickname? My God, what a waste. You know, and that's real money that we could have spent on 2 fighter jets for Qatar that would get bombed by 2 other fighter jets from Israel that we also paid for. But okay, this is the same administration that dozed the out of cancer research and food safety, but they can find billions to change the stationery at the Pentagon? Oh, sorry, not the Pentagon.
The anus of destruction.
But you know what? That's thank God for that effect. But you know what? That's cool. We got the Department of War now, and they'll be terrifying America's enemies wherever they go. Where exactly are they going?
Planning is underway to potentially duplicate Trump's mobilization in D.C. and send troops into Chicago.
I think Chicago will be our next, and then we'll help with New York.
Trump sharing a manipulated image of himself with a twist on a quote from the movie Apocalypse Now. The caption says, "I love the smell of deportations in the morning," and the line, "Chicago about to find out why it's called the Department of War."
So great. The first use of our new Department of War is invading American cities. And by the way, if Trump does send troops to New York, that means he's going to invade the very city he came out of. Freudian much? Just admit that you want to your mom, dude, all right? But before he invades all Democratic cities, Trump first used Washington, D.C. as a test case. It's been a month since Trump sent the National Guard into the nation's capital. And last night, Trump tried to show everyone that it's been a huge success.
Fox News alert, Donald Trump is out on the town. Dinner with members of his cabinet in D.C., showing it's safe to walk around the city after deploying the National Guard.
The restaurants now are booming. People are going out to dinner where they didn't go out for years. And it's a safe city. And I just want to thank the National Guard.
Hey, nothing says I feel safe like driving one block from the White House surrounded by a fleet of armored cars and countless Secret Service agents. And just look at this pussy posse behind him, huh? That looks like the bachelor party from hell. You got the jokester, right? The bad boy. The guy who has work in the morning and doesn't want to be in this friend group anymore and ends up crying through a lap dance. Whatever you think about the occupation of D.C., at least Trump now feels safe enough to go out and he can enjoy a nice meal in peace.
Overnight, while dining out in Washington, D.C., President Trump facing protests.
Free D.C., free Palestine, Trump is Hitler of our time. Free D.C., free Palestine, Trump is Hitler of our time. Free D.C., free Palestine, Trump is Hitler of our time.
Yeah, give it up for the protesters, you know what I mean? Here we go. So, also, they just discovered the most genius way of getting out of your restaurant bill, right? $40 for a shrimp cocktail? Trump's Hitler. Trump's... oh, no, don't kick me out. We didn't settle our tab. Okay, see you. Bye. I'm going to do that next time I go to Panera Bread. I sympathize with these people. I protest in steakhouses all the time. Specifically, Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. What the f*** does that mean? Who is Chris? Why is he Ruth's? By now, you guys all know about yesterday's assassination of Charlie Kirk. And this probably goes without saying, but I feel like I have to say it. I believe killing people is wrong. And I know that's a hot take. But as of now, we don't know who did it. But Kash Patel's FBI is on the case, so we will never know who did it. This is as good a time as any to say political violence is never acceptable and should be condemned. And thankfully, many political leaders think the same.
All four former presidents are reacting to the death of Charlie Kirk. Joe Biden posting on X, quote, "There is no place in our country for this kind of violence." Barack Obama shared a similar sentiment, writing, "This kind of despicable violence has no place in our democracy." And a statement as well from George W. Bush, who said this: "Members of other political parties are not our enemies. They are our fellow citizens." And a message from Bill Clinton, who says he hopes we all go through some serious introspection and redouble our efforts to engage in debate passionately, yet peacefully.
Yeah, and let's not get sidetracked by who may or may not have been friends with Jeffrey Epstein. Okay? Just focus on the introspection thing. But yes, it was comforting to see our living past presidents and Joe Biden attempting to lower the country's temperature yesterday. But none of those guys are running this place right now. So I want to hear from the current big guy.
For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today.
My fellow Americans, we must come together to destroy each other. So yeah, Donald Trump came out with a partisan message blaming the left. And let's be real, did we expect anything different? This is what this guy does. The last time Trump delivered a thoughtful message was apparently when he sent a birthday card to Jeffrey Epstein. Yeah, that's... I realize that's 2 Epstein jokes in a row. It's not my fault everyone was friends with this guy, okay? And by the way, I'm not singling Trump out. This is how our society behaves now. A tragedy occurs. Instead of digesting and trying to understand, everyone sets their feet and starts throwing punches immediately. Like Nancy Mace, Republican congresswoman and somehow the scariest type of mace. She came out swinging, but apparently wasn't expecting a counter.
I'm going to say this. Democrats own what happened today.
Then by that logic, do Republicans own the shooting of the 2 Democratic lawmakers in Minnesota? Isn't this on both sides?
Are you kidding me?
But isn't there a problem with political violence across the spectrum?
Yeah, we're talking about Charlie Kirk right now.
Yeah, okay. We're talking about my thing right now, not about things that make me look stupid, because if we did that, we'd be talking all day long, okay? All right. Now, we're in very familiar territory. Republican accuses Democrat, so Democrat accuses Republican.
What do you say to people who are saying the Democrats need to lower the temperatures?
Oh, please. Right. Why don't you start with the President of the United States?
Right. So here we go again. It's Democrats' rhetoric. No, it's Republicans' rhetoric. Has anyone considered that the problem of political violence in America might not just be the rhetoric, but instead something extraordinarily complex? The problem might be a toxic mix of our gun laws, lack of mental health, collapsed social connection, probably a bunch of other things I haven't even thought of yet. I'm sure Labubu's are somewhere in there to blame. I guess I just don't think rhetoric is the root cause of this thing. Political violence isn't going to go away if the people on the other side say exactly the right words from now on. Now, that said, if you turned on the 24/7 news coverage yesterday, you probably saw some unhelpful rhetoric.
He's been one of the most divisive, especially divisive younger figures in this, who is constantly sort of pushing this sort of hate speech or sort of aimed at certain groups. And I always go back to hateful thoughts lead to hateful words, which then lead to hateful actions. And I think that's the environment we're in, that people just, you can't stop with these sort of awful thoughts you have and then saying these awful words and not expect awful actions to take place.
I don't know, man. Okay? The whole idea of free speech in America is you can say what you want and not expect to be shot. Can you be challenged? Can you be challenged? Sure. Can you get roasted online? Sometimes. Told to leave a child's birthday party? Yeah. Even though I think I was right that the cake fucking sucked, Derek. All right? That was hardly only the bad take. Even some people who understood that a cycle of violence was not the answer, they still wanted to make sure you knew who'd be coming out on top.
The last thing I ever want is violence. Like, I spent 9 years in and out of war. The last thing I want is that. But if these people keep pushing, they're going to radicalize a huge portion of America that they don't want. I want us to be able to debate like Charlie Kirk always did on every campus, gave the airtime to opposing views. I want that as my America, not trading gunfire, because I'll win.
You could have just stopped with the last thing I want is violence. You didn't have to add in because I'll win. But I guess it's like Jesus always said, turn the other cheek, but be ready to cut a mother. But by the way, who's they? No one knows who the shooter is or what his motivation was. And even if it was political, he doesn't represent half the country. But some of these MAGA guys are acting like this is a liberal declaration of war.
If they could do this, they are capable of anything. I think that was the message. I believe that was the message. It's really hard to radicalize Republicans.
Yeah.
You know, it's like we're not the radical type.
I'm sorry, first off, it's not that hard to radicalize Republicans. You guys almost burned down the country because Cracker Barrel changed its font. Second, far be it from me to tell anyone how to do their job, but you couldn't lose the poop emoji mug for one day? When Walter Cronkite broke the news about the Kennedy assassination, he didn't come out in a wacky novelty bow tie. I did not expect a groan from the audience on the novelty bow tie. And also, once again, who is they? Does anyone want to specify who they is, or are we just going to keep talking about all that they do?
They are at war with us. Whether we want to accept it or not, they are at war with us. Trump gets hit in the ear. Charlie gets shot dead. They came after Kavanaugh with a rifle to his neighborhood. They went after Musk's cars.
Sort of petered out there at the end, huh, Jesse? If you're trying to rile people up for war, maybe leave out the car vandalism. Look, I'm sure people in the media would love to talk about how they are responsible for what they've done and how they had better watch out, or else they'll get what's coming to them. But I think it would be better if we, as a country, understood that we have a problem with political violence. And we need to start thinking less in terms of what they should do and more in terms of what we have to do. And it's not lost on me today that the last time it felt like we thought in terms of we was on 9/11, when we all came together as a nation. And we did. We did. Even if it was just for one day. You know, sure, we turned pretty quickly to scapegoating Muslims and blogging about how Bush did it. But on that one day, we were united as a country. For 24 hours, we even admired Rudy Giuliani. That's how incredible our unity was. And I don't know what you do to get back to that. Obviously, not another 9/11. I want to be very clear about that. But what about, I don't know, an alien invasion? You know? Maybe if UFOs suddenly appeared over every important U.S. city and also Los Angeles, that's the thing that would jolt us off our phones and bring us back together. Or the aliens take over and enslave us all. But at this point, that might be worth a try. All right?